I'm Vicki Hogarth and welcome to Southwest Magazine. May is Sexual Violence Awareness Month and we will be marking that specifically with Teal Day on May 30th. Here to tell us more about it are Sam Gullison and Stephanie Clarke from the Willow Centre. Thank you both for being here today.
Thanks for having us back.
Sam, let's start by talking about Teal Day and what it is specifically, and I know that you had a lot to do with this in Charlotte County.
Yeah, so Teal Day would have started kind of like a soft launch 3 years ago where we did a day in Teal in September as a way of raising awareness around sexual violence. Last year, when I moved into this position with the Willow Centre, I worked with Desiree Shelton at Domestic Violence Outreach to reinstate our Charlotte County Abuse Prevention Network, which is a group of partners within the community who come together around education and awareness related to violence and abuse. And so last year was our official annual Teal Day initiative, and what we have done is we've gone out in the community and invited people to have conversations around sexual violence throughout the month, with the idea of leading up to May 30th being an official day in Teal, where people can show support to survivors by wearing the color, which was in 2001, the National Sexual Violence Resource Center had officially established this Sexual Violence Awareness Month, and teal being that color. So for us, we wanted to be creative in the sense of how can we get businesses, organizations, community as a whole talking about it. And so we started doing that by gathering some teal swag that we could provide to the community throughout the month, doing different pop-ups. So we started at the market in St. Andrews last year, where we gave information about resources. We gave away teal shirts, encouraging people to wear teal. Yep, so this one is a flower with some teal ribbons that say listen, believe, support. And then the other one is a Let's Teal With It sexual violence awareness. Let's Teal With It being the hashtag that we've come up with as a network. One of our members and our CMP member had said, it's fun, it's playful, it's engaging. And when we think about sexual violence, it's not something that people want to talk about. There's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of myths around it. And so part of this Teal Day and the initiative is, how do we debunk some of those? How do we be creative in a way that people want to engage? And some of the items that we've been giving away outside of just the shirts, like we have lighters, not for children, but how can we spark some conversations? And on the lighters says, listen, believe, support. Let's Teal With It as a way of keeping the conversations going even beyond May, because we know that sexual violence doesn't just happen in 1 month or one specific day.
And that's why I do love this bracelet that you gave me today that says believe. It's very much in that Taylor Swift mode of friendship bracelets that are such a big thing this year, and that was a part of it too.
It was, yeah. We actually reached out to local businesses to see if they would engage as well. So Twig and Ivory last year did these bracelets. We've reached out to Scrunchie Love a few times, so they've done teal scrunchies. So it's also a way of supporting local and promoting those local businesses as well. We've had a great response. Seasons by the Sea, the very first year, had sponsored. They bought 500 shirts that we were able to give away. The Herring made a donation, and so when those donations come in, they cycle through the network and allow us to buy more swag to be able to give out and make it even bigger. Some local businesses in Charlotte County, for example, the King Street Takeout if you went there wearing teal on Teal Day last year, which was May 31st, you received, I think it was either 10 or 15% off what you were ordering. And then some other local places had different giveaways that had teal swag, just any teal items that they had. You came in, entered in for a draw. So it was a way of us promoting the businesses as well, and for people to be out in the community in a visible way, and kind of, you know, showing that, projecting to the community that we're here, we believe you, we care, we listen, and that wanting to be part of the message of Teal Day. It's about talking about, you know, at the market and at these pop-ups, like, how can we prevent it? How can we prevent sexual violence? What's the best way to support survivors? And, you know, engaging in those conversations while also talking about local statistics. Because oftentimes, and I've had these conversations where, you know, I'm speaking to a community member and they've said, I didn't realize that this is happening in our community. And part of that is, you know, we're not talking about it enough. We're not normalizing it enough. And that's really part of this initiative, is to normalize and to talk about it. And
stigma can have such a, and I'd love to, Stephanie, get your perspective as a sexual violence counselor. What role does stigma have in preventing people from seeking help or even knowing that they need help?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so many. It has so many different implications. Individually, it has the implications of self-doubt, doubting yourself. You start to rationalize within yourself because there's such negative stigma. Sometimes we can even rationalize, like, oh, it wasn't that bad, or maybe I'm being dramatic, or it didn't happen, because that's easier than thinking that it did happen and now I'm alone and I can't talk to anyone about it. It has the social implications of feeling like isolated and alone, and like you can't talk to anyone about it. So you think there's a lot of, we use humor a lot to cope, and that's just something that we use as a society, which isn't always a bad thing. But when we're making jokes about things like sexual violence, what that tells to survivors is, oh, this is something to feel shame about, or something that I can't come forward about. So the stigma can really isolate us and make us feel like we're alone and we can't talk about it. And what we know about isolation is that when we feel isolated, we aren't getting the help that we need, or we're not able to move forward in the healing process because we get stuck there.
Teal Day is such a wonderful initiative, but I do want to highlight some of the incredible work you both have already done. The Willow Centre did an empowerment fair that you were a part of this fall that really is starting these community conversations and bringing us together, where it's something, if it affects you directly or not, why is it so important, Sam, to have all of the community on board to really be aware of sexual violence?
Well, I think what's important to note is, you know, statistically 1 in 3 women are impacted by sexual violence, and 1 in 6. And so
1 in 6 men?
1 in 6 men, sorry, yes.
Yep.
And so I think it's important to recognize that although you may not be one of those 1 in 3 or one of those 1 in 6, you know somebody who has been. And so it really impacts all of us, and we all have a role in challenging, you know, the myths and the stereotypes and the media and what's put out there, because those stereotypes and the messages that you receive in media really shape people's beliefs. And so we all have a role to play when it comes to supporting survivors and raising awareness and in preventing it, because it is something that impacts so many. And you know, last year in Charlotte County, there were 41 reports, RCMP, sexual assault, and other violation reports. And so let's break that down for a minute. We're looking at, we have 52 weeks in a year. We have 41 incidents in Charlotte County. 15 being in St. Stephen. And when I say Charlotte County, I'm speaking of St. Stephen, St. Andrews, St. George, Campobello, Grand Manan, and some of those surrounding areas. But only on average 5 to 6% report. And so we know that those numbers are far larger than what we're seeing. And then this year alone, just from January till March 14th, there have been 21 reports, which is already larger than last year. And I would hope to think that perhaps, you know, the Willow Centre being here and the network being here and having these events and engaging the community, that perhaps that's playing a role in people feeling that maybe they can come forward because there's some supports that can be accessed.
Yeah, and on that note, Stephanie, for people who, you've been here twice before to speak of the incredible work that you both do at the Willow Centre. For people who might be seeing this interview for the first time, though, can you tell us a little bit about the Willow Centre and the role you play, not just in Charlotte County, but in also the Charlotte County Abuse Prevention Network?
Absolutely. So we act as a sexual violence center. We are a sexual violence center, so we do free counseling to survivors or anyone impacted by sexual violence. So that could be family members. If you have a friend that's going through it and you just need someone to talk to and don't know how to handle that, you can come to us. We do support and advocacy. So if you need to go to a doctor's appointment or meet with a SANE nurse, if you need to go to the RCMP or have an interview and you need someone there to support you and advocate for you, we can be that for you. We can make referrals to legal advice and things along those lines. It's really important to us that all of our services are free to the client because we want to make it accessible. And our role, I guess, on the Abuse Prevention Network is just to help make sure that sexual violence isn't getting missed, because it is taboo to talk about it. There is stigma. It is uncomfortable, and so normalizing it, and so just making sure that we're always a part of the conversation, because the more that we're part of the conversation, the more comfortable that people get being uncomfortable, and then that allows for more reporting and increasing reporting statistics.
The statistics you were sharing, Sam, that means when you say 5 to 6%, that take those statistics then and times it by 20, and that's probably your real number. Before we started filming, you were telling me a story about this year's Teal Day, where a woman from the community made a quilt.
Yeah.
Which is really a beautiful example of how you're already normalizing this conversation, and I don't know if there's a better really metaphor than a quilt for that comfort, and also that idea of community coming together and weaving something beautiful. Tell us a little bit about the quilt that will be a part of this year's Teal Day, but was really a year in the making.
Yeah, absolutely. So Joanne Spencer, who is local to St. Andrews, I met her at the market, and this was when the Willow Centre was just kind of starting. And so we were having some conversations, just, again, the whole point of normalizing and talking about it in our community, and she just loved what we were doing, and she said, I really want to support this work. I think it's really important. And she had given me her name and her number, and she said, I'm a quilter, I'd love to do a quilt. And so to our surprise, a few weeks ago, she tracked us down because our location wasn't public, so she found us, and she brought this really beautiful king quilt, and she wants us to raffle tickets as a fundraiser to support the work we're doing and to help in keeping the services free. For example, Steph's pretty well to capacity, and so we need to outsource our counseling, and so wanting to make sure that it's still no cost to the survivor, and so that things like, her doing this is going to allow us to be able to have funds to do that. But the quilt is hand stitched. It is valued at $1,200. I wish that I had all of the information with me about the design. Yeah, I can't remember.
It's something lattice
Yeah.
design, but there's quilters always put like where it was made, who made it, the dimensions, the design.
And we
the
have all that
pattern.
listed on our social media.
So, and so if anyone's watching at home right now, I'm sure they're going to want to know how to buy tickets, also how to get t-shirts and anything else that might be a part of Teal Day, how to follow. So where is the best place to find this online and also follow what you're doing?
Yeah, so Facebook, the Willow Centre Sexual Violence Supports is our page, our Facebook social media page. So we have everything listed on there. The Charlotte County Abuse Prevention Network, so CCAPN is what you would look up on social media, and it's all posted on there. So we've done one pop-up already at the Superstore. We're doing another one on the 23rd from 11 till 4, and we will be there passing out shirts, passing out different swag. The quilt will be there for people to see if they want to buy tickets. Everything that we're giving away is free. We do receive donations, and those are appreciated, but not necessary. We're doing on May 20th at the Willow Centre a teal shirt pop-up. So we're encouraging people that if you have a teal shirt and you want us to put a design on it, you can bring it to us. We will press it for you. And following that, Steph is actually doing a presentation on trauma and adverse childhood experiences as well. And that's from 6:30 till 8-ish. On the 20th, and then we'll be at the St. Andrew's Market on the 22nd, which is the Thursday, and the 29th.
Stephanie, tell us a little bit more about your presentation. I know that when you had the empowerment fair at the Garthland, your presentations were a big part of that. What will you be discussing, and why does it show that there's sometimes multiple issues at play that lead to the trauma that we experience?
Adverse childhood experience is something that is really near and dear to my heart, and I think is something that I wish was taught more and more, because it affects all of us. So adverse childhood experiences, it was a study that was done in like the years 1994, 95, I think. There's originally 17,000 participants, and it was done, I think Kaiser was one of the people that did it, and they were looking for how household dysfunction, neglect, and abuse affected physical health outcomes later in life. And what they found, they asked 10 questions, looking at sexual violence, physical violence, addictions, and other such questions. And what they found was that if you scored a 3 or above before the age of 18, you were at higher risk for things like COPD, heart disease, depression, anxiety, addictions, obesity, and the list kind of goes on. And it now even includes things like chronic pain and migraines, autoimmunity, and more mental health issues as well. And so that has a huge effect on us as we age, and it has a lot to do with our body being in this fight or flight system, and it has to do with our ability to focus and our ability to do school and concentrate and things like that as well. And so I think it's really important, one, for us to know as parents. So if we're parenting, it's good to know these are the types of things to look out for. As teachers, to know how to interact with children that may be dealing with adverse childhood experiences. It's good for us to understand ourselves and understand our reactions, our response to something that we didn't get or experienced when we were children, and can help us offer compassion to ourselves but the people around us, and instead of judging, maybe looking at it from a perspective of compassion and saying, oh, this is how we can show up for ourselves and other people, and there are actually tangible steps that we can take to work on healing ourselves, building coping skills, and undoing some of the trauma that we learned in childhood so that we can rewire our brain to respond differently as adults. And it's not something that we're lacking, it's something that we didn't receive. And so it's something I'm really passionate about, and I think talks to the complexity of trauma and sexual violence and anything, is that it's perpetuated by things like adverse childhood experiences and intergenerational trauma, and how easily that can be passed down very unintentionally through families. But awareness is key, because when we're aware, then we can make changes. And so I think it and that affects our physical health and our mental health and our spiritual health and our social relationships. And so I think that's why I think it's so important to do a presentation on this topic.
Having this month as an awareness month, what are some of the misconceptions, the real key misconceptions that you hope that we can do away with, hopefully in this month, or at least bring some light to?
Well, there are a few. It's sexual violence happens to everybody. I mean, we know that women are more likely, or those of the LGBTQ plus, yes, community, Indigenous women are 3 times more likely than non-Indigenous, and also that men too experience sexual violence. It's wanting to debunk the myth that, it's strangers. Oftentimes, when you think about sexual violence, people are like, oh, somebody being raped in an alley, when the reality is 85% is done by somebody that you know, either in the home or somebody close to the home. And wanting to, have that awareness around that.
We treat certain victims different ways, because we're like, oh, you were wearing this, and but as Sam said, everyone is susceptible to sexual violence, and so it's honoring and understanding that it happens in seniors' homes, and it happens in schools, and it happens on sports teams, and there is no such thing as a perfect victim. And so getting rid of the stigma around that. And so, like, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't believe that happened, because I could never believe this person did that. And even holding space, I think, for that, I don't know if that's necessarily a misconception, but we see that a lot where grooming happens. But a myth, I guess, would be that grooming happens to the individual that's being groomed, but grooming happens to everyone. Like someone who is groomed, someone that's younger than them, or someone that they have sexually abused, they've also groomed the community around them. Yes. And so that's when you hear things like, they could never do that, I don't believe that, and we have whole communities not believing individuals.
Which is why survivors don't come forward a lot of the time, and that's why, another one being, that, well, there should be physical injuries. Only 1% of the time will you see a physical injury on a survivor who's been who's experienced sexual violence. And so it's, having those conversations around what does it look like and what is it? And what does consent mean?
Right.
Because so many people think, okay, consent, I said no. It is so much more than that. It's ongoing. It is reversible. You can change your mind. It's enthusiastic. It's freely given. Those are all parts of consent, and so oftentimes, even during these pop-ups, we have these conversations, and people say, well, no means no, and it's like, no does mean no, but no looks very different. It doesn't need to be verbal. You also need to be coherent, And so it's education around that, because I also feel that there are individuals that may not feel like they've experienced sexual violence because they didn't know that this wasn't them giving consent. And then if you look at, in terms of perhaps in an intimate relationship, you can be married and still be violated by your partner, or in any, not necessarily I said married, but in any intimate relationship, right? And so it's those conversations.
And addiction must play a factor too, or if maybe there was alcohol or drugs involved, you might think, oh, I can't quite remember the full extent of the circumstances, so maybe in this case, the same as you might think, I was wearing this, or this is a partner I've had for years, therefore maybe I was asking for this
Yeah,
type
absolutely.
of treatment.
And that's where that stigma comes back of like we start to really question ourselves because there's such a negative stigma around it. And so if we were drinking, we're like, oh, we put ourselves in that situation. And that's the rhetoric that we hear all the time. Well, if I didn't wear that, maybe I wouldn't have been there, or if I wasn't hanging out with guys. And this might be really blunt to say, but I can tell you I've been drunk a lot in my lifetime, and I've never accidentally raped somebody. And so it's really like it's putting the onus back on the perpetrator as opposed to the survivor of you should be able to do whatever you want without risk of being violated. It's not the reality that we live in, but it's never the survivor's fault.
I can't tell you how blessed we are to have you both in the community, and just being here in the job I have in the community to see the impact you've already had is truly incredible. Thank you both for being here today, and you know this door is open anytime you want to come back. Conversations can never be enough, so please do come back anytime.
Perfect. Thank you.
My guests today have been Sam Gullison and Stephanie Clarke from the Willow Centre, talking about May being Sexual Violence Awareness Month, as well as Teal Day on May 30th. Please be a part of it. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Southwest Magazine.
Southwest Magazine is a news and public affairs production of CHCO Television.